Okay, so this tutorial is going to cover one specific functionality from a game, and that is the ability to have a flashlight. So it may seem like a very simple, a very simple task to make a flashlight, but there's actually one very important attribute that I want to cover. So let's start with the basics. First, let's just create an object for the flashlight to be shined on. So 3D object, cube, just center this. So 0, 0, put that at 0 as well, and we'll just increase the size. So 4, 4, let's see how that looks. Okay. Now, when you create a new 3D environment, it automatically has the directional light. Let's get rid of that because that's making everything bright, and we really want to see the flashlight in action. So let's go ahead and create our light. So game object, light, spotlight, and we're going to first center this again. So 0, 0. Let's put this at like -5. So halfway in between the two. Now let's rotate it towards the wall. And now we're just going to rotate our director point of view here. And there you go. So that's only the very basic, only introductory. We're not anywhere near done. So if you run that, you can see that you have a light shining onto the wall. And you could call it a day just doing that. But if you've ever used a flashlight, you know that you don't have a nice, even light like that, that you tend to have lighter and darker areas. Now, to do that, the way you accomplish that, okay, is through a cookie. The cookie works the opposite of the way that you would think it would. So let's take this spotlight image down here. What this is this is just a square image, and for it to be a cookie, it has to be exactly square. Okay, and let's open this up. So very often flashlight, like the center will be like you'll have like this kind of star in the center, and then you have kind of like rings going out. The way it works is wherever there is a solid image, that is where you'll have the light. So that might seem counterintuitive. You might think, okay, well, wouldn't the space in between be where the light is, because this would block it? That's not the way it works. That's why I said I really want to cover this, because where you have a line, where you have an area that's filled in, that is where the light is. So kind of counterintuitive. So you're actually drawing the pattern of the light. Now, you don't want these like dead spaces though, because a flashlight you would not expect to have a total dark area. You may have inconsistent lighting, but it shouldn't be totally dark. The way you handle that is this in-between space here and this space here, these are actually somewhat translucent. So whereas this is 100% solid, I believe the exact term the program uses is opacity, this is only like 50% opacity. So this lets some light go through and some light not go through. And by doing that, you can create this inconsistent level. Now, how do you do that? Well, I'm going to go over to the other program for just a minute. It's called Anime Studio Pro. And I'm not doing a full tutorial on this. I just want to explain how I got it accomplished. Just like other illustration programs, there are multiple layers. This top layer, okay, I'm going to hide the bottom layer. This top layer are these solid rings that you want the light to pass through 100%. This bottom ring, though, this is actually somewhat translucent. See, it's set at 55% opacity. So it may look like it's solid, but it's actually somewhat opaque. So the net effect is that this top layer, these areas, light passes through 100%. Again, it's counterintuitive. You would think that this would block the light. That's not the way it works. It does just the opposite. And then on this bottom layer, for this area, light passes through partially. So now let's go back to this. So here's that image. So click on the spotlight. Now, when you import an image, it defaults to texture, which is what we need. But the wrap mode usually defaults to repeat. Okay, you don't want repeat. You want it to only happen once. So change it to clamp. So now we go to spotlight. Take that, drag and drop it where it reads cookie, and suddenly there you go. Let's run it. And now this is the dark, and you can see that these patterns here are actually somewhat lighter. They're actually translucent. So that's how you do it. Now this is a very crude example. I wouldn't, you really don't expect a flashlight to look like this, but you get the idea. You could very easily create a more complex image just by applying a cookie. There's other ways to do it. It all depends the aesthetic you're looking for, but you can definitely create like a flashlight pattern. And now let's look at another attribute of a flashlight. Sometimes maybe the batteries are dying, or maybe the flashlight has been damaged and you want the light to flicker. So what we want to do is we want to be able to cycle through intensity. So watch what happens. We turn the intensity up, it gets brighter. Turn it down, it gets dimmer. So basically, if using a script, you change that intensity fairly quickly, then what will happen is you'll get like a flickering effect. So let's go ahead and create a new script. Let's call it flicker. Even though the script controlling the flashlight probably would do a lot more. Let's go ahead and open that up. Zoom in a bit. Now, so basically what we need is we need a variable that is going to track intensity, and then we apply that variable to the intensity of this component. So let's do public float, and it will be, let's just call it dim level. Actually, I think 1 is a little bit too dim, so let's start with a 2. And we're just going to come up with a very basic way of doing this. And so what we're going to do is you'd probably have to make this more refined in yours. This is just to give you the idea of how you would cycle between levels. So let's create a coroutine, and then we'll refer out to it. So IE numerator, and then the name, change dim. Okay, so I enumerated change dim. So yield, return, new. Don't worry too much about what that does. Yes, you need to put those 3 words in, but what's key about this line is this. Wait 4 seconds. You're going to delay. So let's make this like 0.2f. So you're going to wait 0.2 of a second, and then you're going to do something. And what we're going to do is just very simple. We're just going to change the dimness level from one level to another, and it's going to be extreme enough so you can see the difference. So if dim level equals 2, then we want something to happen. Then dim level equals 1. Then we'll say else level equals 2. So in other words, if this variable is currently set to 2, change it to 1. If it's not set to 2, then change it to 2, because the only other value will be 1, because this will be the only place that this value is changed. And then in the update section, we do get component, and it's light. And then it's specifically the intensity that we want to change. And let's see if we just do it like this. Intensity is equal to dim level. Okay, and now that we wrote the coroutine, now we have to tell the system to go out and actually run it. So start coroutine, change dim. There we go, and that should do it. So we start at this variable with the value of 2. It gets applied to the intensity attribute. Then we go ahead and we start this coroutine. The coroutine says wait 0.2 of a second. If it's at 2, change it to 1. Next time it runs, it's gonna see, okay, is it equal to 2? No, it's equal to 1. Then change it back to 2. And every 0.2 of a second, this is just gonna flicker. There you go. So it's not as, it's a pretty convincing effect, although it's partly for the wrong reason, and that is this keeps getting run over and over again. So what you'd want to do is you'd also want a delay here. So public string delay, let's call it reset, equals n. So basically what this is going to do is it doesn't want this to keep running every single frame, because it's going to read this, okay, once per frame. By using this variable, we're going to say, oh, wait, hang on, don't do it yet. So if you've come down here into change dim, then that new variable delay reset should be changed to y. Why did we do that? Now we can make this happen conditionally. So if delay reset equals y, oops, equals no, excuse me, equals n, so it starts off as n. There. So if this variable is set to n, then go ahead and do this. It goes ahead and does it, but immediately changes that back to y. That way this stops being true. And since it stops being true, then it won't keep doing it again and again and again. So this gets set to yes or to y, waits 0.2 of a second, then we can change this back to no. So delay reset equals n. There we go, much more steady. Now in some ways, the other was a little bit more natural because it was so fast and so inconsistent, but that's just to give you the basic idea. That's just to give you the basics of how you control something such as flicker. You could do this as, say, maybe 0.1. And again, you want to be, aware. Obviously, if you're using flickering rights, make sure that your game has the proper disclosures and things like that. So if people have conditions that they could be adversely affected by flickering rights, that they're aware. But that's the basics. So now we've looked at how to create a light. If you want to add a cookie to it to give it more of a pattern, again, this doesn't look great because it's a very simplistic pattern, but at least it gives you the idea of how that works. And like I said, I wanted to cover that because to me that's counterintuitive, that where it's filled in is actually where light passes through. So to me, I'd expect the exact opposite. And now you look at how you can flicker the light. So if there's anything else you want to, if there's anything else you want to see, just let me know. But I think that covers the basics of having like flashlight functionality. So that should do it.